Alright, my name is VTech Guy. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the top 10 list of people that could have turned around TNA. Of course, I'll probably be looking at most of the people that were earlier in the career of TNA, not really during that dark period of time, sadly, and then where we're at today, seen as TNA is really high up, but they got the burdens and basically the demons of the past standing in their way. Anyways, I'm joined by Snake Peter over there and K Molds Incorporated. How you guys doing today?
What's up?
Pretty good. Well,
I'm doing pretty good actually. We're getting ready for some Raw. Let's get into a little bit of discussion about this TNA stuff though.
I don't know what happened to Snake Peter, but hopefully we'll find him along the way. Let's go straight in here to number 10. Jay Lethal. Without a doubt, we saw what he did as Black Machismo. He had a great little run with Ric Flair, Randy Savage. The guy had an impressive career in TNA. And then when he went to ROH, he held that title for a very long time. What are your thoughts on Jay Lethal and how he could have really aided TNA? Because not really one guy in particular on this list could save TNA, but it's their star power that helps everybody else look more important also. So,
well, the thing that Jay Lethal had that they didn't until and they only did it in bits and pieces where they really utilized how charismatic this guy was.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the most charismatic people still today.
True.
He's on the mic. It's just someone you want to listen to every word he says. You almost call it that Chris Jericho effect. Just every word he says, and every time he has a mic, you want to shut up and listen.
And I'm really sad he doesn't get the microphone as much nowadays as he did back then. I mean, this guy.
Well, yeah. Now he has a mouthpiece.
Yeah, I really sat down one day and I was watching some old Jay Lethal stuff, and I saw a video clip that's kind of going viral again, which is him and Ric Flair going back and forth. Remember that?
Him and that impression.
That was phenomenal. So, not to spend too much time on Jay Lethal, but I think he's definitely one of the greats in terms of who could have really helped out not only the main card scene, but I think that X division. I mean, he did a lot for that X division, and I think the future of the X division really needs that. They need a guy who previously was in the X division long term, very, very long term, like Lethal was. And kind of rolling into the next effect of divisions that need that long term star power from the past is number 9, the Young Bucks. So, well, they're not really the Young Bucks.
We couldn't have said this list without them.
They're not really the Young Bucks in TNA though. They were Generation Me. But
they were almost the same gimmick for the most part.
Yeah, and they were phenomenal in TNA. I wouldn't say they're crazy good in TNA, but I think if you look at long-term picture, and that's a lot with some of these people on the list, is long-term, they've done really good. Like the Bucks, phenomenal. I'm not one to be crazy about these 5-star matches and all that stuff, but when you actually sit down and you just watch a match, you don't have any biasness or anybody in your ear. You're like, wow, some of the stuff they've been doing is really phenomenal. I love their stuff in New Japan, but you can't take away the stuff in ROH. And of course, Generation Me in TNA was pretty good, and it helped to build them in the indie scene. Of course, with AJ Styles, Bullet Club, all of that. So, all right, number 8, Colt Cabana. Mons, you want to just shoot on Colt Cabana and why he's
boom Colt Cabana.
When you look at Grado, he's got that entertainment aspect, but I don't think he has that star power entertainment aspect in the States. Colt Cabana is the opposite. He has that great
Colt Cabana
star power.
Is like the Grado of the U.S.
Exactly. So I think he's where, just picture this in your mind for a second. Replace Grado with Colt Cabana, and then it's boom, boom, and then Shear's doing the little finger dance thing. Gotta love the little finger dance thing. So, there's that. Next up is number 7, Joey Ryan. Holy crap. Could you imagine Joe Ryan in TNA going back to TNA? Because he was in their like gut check challenge or whatever it was called. I couldn't really remember what it was called. But he was a part of one of those challenges. And if you look long term also at Joey Ryan, imagine if he was in TNA or if he joined TNA after what he got famous for with the whole DDT thing and all that. But yeah, especially Lucha Underground. Like, if you really see the man's potential, he's just such an entertaining character. Just to go back to Colt Cabana for a second, they both have that very entertaining aspect to them. So, you want to shoot real quick, Mullins, on Joey Ryan?
Joey Ryan is another guy. He is 100% entertainment all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's another person that, in the whole aspect, because I feel like, as it pertains, WWE is the obviously upper echelon of this concept, but as it pertains, that's this TNA is the closest company to the WWE where entertainment almost supersedes in-ring ability. Mm-hmm. Where, yeah, Joey Ryan's still pretty good in the ring. I wouldn't call him a 5-star ring general, but entertainment-wise, he is up there with the best of the best in today's game.
Definitely.
Which is why he's another guy that definitely could have pushed TNA. He could have, if they would have used him properly, he could still be there doing something.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of people that could have still been there doing something, here's a tag team that I think we really, 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 really need right now, or we needed, the Motor City Machine Guns. People might say what they want about their individual title reigns. I was a big fan of Sabin and Shelley individually, especially if you look at Shelley with Kushida as the Time Splitters, or Sabin coming back as Motor City Machine Guns, or the Machine Guns in ROH, stuff like that. I really feel like TNA needed that tag team star power that would put over people, because if you look at the Hardy Boys, building a tag team to beat them is going to be very hard.
Because they're already the most. They're probably the most proven tag team in wrestling, and that's active today.
And they just have that worth in TNA. Like, they are probably one of the most, if not the most worthiest thing and valuable thing in TNA right now. So having somebody that's going to beat them is nearly impossible, because we just don't have anyone who's that built up, especially as a heel tag team. The Machine Guns, they're more of like, the Wolves, like, they're better as good guys, but they could do great as bad guys too, don't get me wrong there. So, number 4, I put Chavo Guerrero Jr. on this list. Hold on. Don't get crazy for this one. Chavo Guerrero is the kind of the mind behind Lucha Underground. Of course, there's also other people helping him out, but he has a big factor in Lucha Underground, and I think if he would apply his work to TNA, similar to when he was in TNA, he did some decent stuff, but I think as a backstage role model for people, imagine if he had his hand on helping with the Delete versus Decay, Final Deletion, Great War stuff. I think that extra element of what he could bring to the table would help out. So, number 3, I'm going to give this entirely to Mullins, is Aces and Eights. Just shoot.
Aces and Eights.
On what could have happened and what could have been.
Okay. Well, let's look at this as a whole right now. The Aces and Eights. You got Bully Ray. Yeah, that was a good spot for Bully Ray. It was perfect for the whole storyline. You got Devon. You can't have Bully Ray without Devon anymore. Anyway, really. It worked that way. And then you had Anderson for a bit. And then we slowly go downhill into a zone that you're like, what the hell? We had the vice president of the Ace and Eights, D'Lo Brown, a man who, by that point, he hadn't been relevant in over a decade. And he was now thrust into a position where he was the vice president of a club of individuals who was trying to take over TNA.
And I'm going to be ballsy for a second. I think Aces and Eights could have been the modern day NWO, and it could have been bigger than...
It could have, but they blew it.
Than Bullet Club, honestly.
But it really could have, but they blew it. like, and the thing about it is, and they didn't even really blow it on like certain guys, because I'll tell you right now, I liked Bischoff in this group because I think Garrett Bischoff is a very, very entertaining guy. It obviously runs in his family, I believe. And then also, I liked Wes Briscoe in this group too, because he had the look of a superstar. He had that look of a perfect, just badass.
They had the great guy to combat against them too. If you think about it, they had the perfect babyface to combat against them. They had the perfect build up for, people to turn on the aces and eights within them. I wouldn't say that Anderson versus Bullier was a 5-star, phenomenal, great, go and watch it right now match, but it was decent. It was decent for what its conclusion was. Of course, other stuff happened. We had some steel cage matches for the world heavyweight title, stuff like that.
Yeah, and then you also had in there you had Doc, Luke Gallows. He if you've ever listened to any of our reviews, I'm a big fan of Luke Gallows. I think that he could be a modern day Kevin Nash if pushed correctly. And then you had Nux. I've never been able to get behind him as an individual.
He did good as I think he was somebody in the Menagerie, right? He did. Yeah,
he was the main ringleader.
Yeah, I don't have the Menagerie on the list, by the way, because I don't think they could have really turned around the company, sadly. But,
that was not something that could have turned this company around.
Yeah, that's not even worth an honorable mention, sadly.
That couldn't have turned around any company.
And the Menagerie needed to end on a side note because of the decay, which is a lot more valuable than even some people on this list. But on to number 2, Kazuchika Okada. Man, that guy... Just,
when you think about it, like people will listen to that name and be like, "Whoa, he was in TNA." Yes, he was in TNA.
Guy. He was very young when he was in TNA, and I think that.
I was gonna say I don't know if he was even like known in Japan at that point, or maybe vaguely known.
I don't think he was even like. He was like, or I'm trying to think of a really low level guy in Japan right now. I can't say some people because they're really getting up there, but. Especially at an alarming rate. I think people are getting really popular in Japan. But Kazuchika Okada, that long-term goal, like I said, the Rainmaker. Imagine that in TNA. Especially because I think TNA, they need that one Asian man, to say the least, who could be a legitimate threat to the roster. Like, I can't think of any people over, in Japan or China or South Korea, like in those areas of Asian all that descent, at least in the male division. I can't think of anybody on top of my mind. I know, of course, Gail Kim and Jade, Mia Yim, all respect to her, they're phenomenal. So I think, but Kazuchika Okada, of course. Side mention, Hiroshi Tanahashi was a part of TNA. He had a short little thing with AJ Styles, of course. Kind of forgettable, sadly, even more forgettable. But I think Okada, I at least remember him more in TNA. But number 1 is a guy who. You remember he was in TNA. You can't remember a whole lot of what he did in TNA, but it was important. So number 1 is CM Punk. Man, another thing was long-term CM Punk. Like, could you imagine if we had the pipe bomb in the Impact Zone against Dixie Carter saying, hey, the company's going to be better without you, Dixie. And then, instead of John Laurinaitis,
the thing about it
Billy Corgan.
is I feel like he would have fit out better, honestly, as it pertains to that storyline alone in TNA, because I'm going to tell you right now, I feel like there were certain people that were telling him he couldn't do certain things he probably wanted to do in that storyline.
I think definitely Punk.
I guarantee you that there would have been nobody telling him he couldn't do those certain things in TNA. Because TNA, for the most part, TNA understands, hey, we want the ratings, whereas WWE will be like, well, okay, we don't need that rating because we're doing well no matter what. So we just don't want you to do that because we feel like it'll down on certain people we don't want downed on.
Yeah, and I don't think. Punk would be. I don't think the chains would be there for Punk for TNA. I think they would definitely be. They're definitely more riskier than WWE. I mean, WWE will do one risky thing in a while, but TNA, they'll kind of be consistent with it. But I think Punk in TNA, if you look at how he evolved from doing stuff with Raven and all of them in TNA to doing stuff, of course, in ROH also, but going to that ECW aspect, he was still kind of the same guy, and he kind of like he really could have evolved in TNA.
He's kept relatively the same gimmick.
Like if we could have evolved CM Punk from TNA, if he would have stayed in TNA, I could have seen that transition. Of course, I think the big guy for CM Punk would have been that AJ Styles, and Punk could have been leader of like Aces and Eights. You know, Punk could have had his great fights with like Austin Aries. You know, I really think Punk could have done a lot for the company.
Think about that, Punk and Rude.
Yeah, Punk, like Aces and Eights could have been Punk's Nexus. Styles could have been Punk's Cena. They could have, of course, had the old guys come in and he beat them up and whatnot. So I mean, he could have been really valuable. Don't know if he would have been as mainstreamed because he wouldn't have been on that WWE platform, but I think Punk's the type of guy that could have made his own platform of TNA and what he had to get it out there.
Well, I think by the time he got to WWE, there was by the time, like, I know you're a little bit younger, whatnot, but by the time he had got to the WWE, a lot of people already knew who he was.
Well, that's because
like, he already had like a pretty like
stuff in IWA.
He already had like a pretty good like around that 07 time, 06 time. He already had like a pretty good. Everyone knew. Oh, that's CM Punk.
Yeah, and of course, looking at his older stuff with IWA and going to ROH, stuff he was doing with Hero, because the indie scene, I think that the indie scene is as crazy it is right now as it was back in that early 2000s area. Like, wrestling has very awkward times for each individual zone of wrestling, whether it's Japan, Mexico, the British Isles. Like, we're definitely seeing different booming periods and different downside periods, and I just hope this isn't a downside period for entertainment if something bad happens to TNA. So I'm ending with that because, hey, I will never know the future of TNA until it finally hits its conclusion. It could have hit it right now during this video. I don't know, but hopefully TNA is still around and we still have that potential to build more stars up. So